Welcome everyone to Las Vegas, the last race here. Alright, take care of Venom. Venom, who's gonna see himself actually racing here under the lights in the Haas. Various teams out here getting all the times in they can. It's Unbroken Leonardo who finds himself with the top time. Squirt right behind with a 131.3. Renato finding himself in third at the time, going back in the pits. Right now we have Aussie Man who's on his outlap, and in the Las Vegas GP, this is our first time coming here. Not many corners have been labeled. In fact, I'll make the names as we go on. As we do go over here, they are going to be coming up into the sphere, where you can see the giant sphere. Look at that little friendly fella. Now, what you can notice is yellow's in first sector as a Red Bull does seem to be going off very slowly, starting his outlap. It's no issue. It's a very normal occurrence. There's no reason to be of concern, but what you can see up ahead for the Red Bulls is a bunch of traffic, it looks like, by the seams of it. You can see Aussie Man right now at the moment as he goes ready to head onto the strip, the main strip, going right along into third sector right now. He currently finds himself with Aston in 7th place, trying to beat Mercedes here, who do find themselves ahead of Aston Martin by some points here in the Constructors. This is the last race, in fact, for the Constructors that could seal the deal for Red Bull as we speak, who finds himself actually 44 points ahead of Ferrari going into Vegas. Mercedes currently finding themselves currently secured and safe, but Aston Martin, who finds himself currently under threat, tied with McLaren, could lose the spot for 4th place. It does also bring in another matter of issue here, where we have another battle going on for the constructor points here and places. Williams and Racing Bulls only separated by 7 points. But here's the crazier twist to that. Alpine and Racing Bulls are both at 190 points. So you would think, oh wow, the 3 bottom teams down there are having a little fight off. Well, you're correct, except that Kick Sauber could probably even get themselves squeezed in there, finding themselves with 175 points. It's never over though, because at the current matter, Renato, who finds himself with the most poles ever seen and recorded here. Not here at this track, but during the season. Aussie Man, who will put it across the line, finds himself 6th, right behind Inhumane Dan, who finds himself reserving for the Kick Sauber time, and better yet, finds himself P5, right ahead of the 2 Red Bulls, who currently are on laps themselves. Leo, who hasn't found himself in the top in quite some time now, hopefully can actually keep this podium and bring this pole position that he currently has into a possible contention. You never know though, with how tight the battles have been recently. Renato's been stealing the fastest poles and had actually found himself leading this season with 6 poles out of our whole race calendar. He did find himself joining midway through as Mark puts up an amazing time, finding himself in 4th, sandwiched between the McLarens, as Goober himself is P6. The battle here is against Renato for Goober though, who finds himself in a battle for 3rd place. Renato, although with the advantage, with 270 points, Neon with 201, it puts Neon at quite a disadvantage for that 3rd place, although you never quit till it's over. especially when you gamble under the lights of Vegas. Renato's found himself in a huge incident before with Squirt, and starting up there again, you never know. That could always spell disaster, but what you can say is another disaster is what seems to be an Aston Martin currently stuck at one of the hairpins of Sector 3. Not hairpins, my bad. Chicanes. Although he does get himself back into the pits following the Alpine. Unsure if it did ruin the Alpine's lap there. We won't be sure. There you can see Golden Sniper going for another lap. Already not gaining time. In fact, he's losing out a bit there. Not what he really wants for the Williams team, who finds himself in a tricky situation with the RB of Souls and Max putting up some remarkable times there, and especially with Dan, who could find the way for Kick Sauber to gain some massive points here, especially with Striker's impressive performances when it comes to putting down quali laps. Almost seeming like there's a whole slipstream going on there for U6 in the background. I believe that is U6 who's killing it out there on track, right behind the Williams driver, gaining more than anything, getting the slipstream as the Williams goes in, going for that third sector to go across the whole lap with a 10th place for the Haas team. That's wonderful work. Haas, who's found themselves struggling throughout this whole season with 69 points to their name. As of Brazil, they find themselves with not many points compared to Season 1 when they were in second place, but now they can find themselves a little happy with a performance like that coming from U6, someone who was just announced to drive for the Haas team when it came down to it. There wasn't just one Haas driver though, of course there was two. Speaking of Deathly Venom, who would find himself right before going out and saying, "Wish me the best of luck," as he goes out on track, starts out with his outlap to get ready. Lewis, though, who finds himself currently on the lap of his own, is currently going through the third sector chicane. Can he nail it? He slides, and he almost loses the car completely. He saves it, though, keeping that lap almost there. Will he use it as a benchmark, or will he just pit with the 3 minutes left remaining? He's going to keep it out. He's going to try to find the time with it, but it's just nothing. He cuts through the line to go into the pits just last minute. He just doesn't feel confident with that. Slip up, everything was going terrible, and it's going even worse. He's getting held up in the pit lane as we speak. Dan, who finds himself actually gaining right now from 8th place on his own lap, about to cross the line to third sector, who will find himself staying in P8. 2 minutes and 48 seconds still left on the clock. He might stay out if he has enough fuel, and he might go out for another lap, as Souls himself is currently on the out lap. Yellow sector's going up in first sector. It's unaware if it's from the Alpine or Haas driver, but what you can see is one of the cars up ahead going slowly, going into one of the braking zones right there. Souls invalidating his outlap, hopefully not invalidating his next lap, which is seen to happen in the 24 game. Nocturno, who finds himself unable to continue. Some sort of issue of some sort had to occur right there. There's no doubt about it that it would just randomly take him out. But what you do know for Souls is there's a shitload of traffic up ahead. That's not what he wants, especially when it's all bunched up in first sector. And he clunkers the back end of his RB right there. Not what Souls wants. It's going to be the end race for him here. But on top of that, you can see everyone behind who's starting their own outlap. It's all getting bunched up, and Soul slamming it into the side of the barrier. Hopefully, his right-hand side of the car there is holding in, as his left side took a good knocking as well. Not what Souls wants to see, but what we do want to see is everyone who's ready to start their outlaps. Right up ahead, you have Leo, who's still leading with an impressive quali time to keep the pole as Inhumane Dan retires from the session. Dan possibly making his car, he's probably just keeping the car where it is. That's my only guess to know what that move really was there. But what you do know is Squirt's getting a nice slipstream off of Leo here. And what you can notice is Leo was getting a little twitchy with the car, as same as Squirt is. Hopefully, Hash Brown can hopefully bring himself from the P5 up a little further. But Leo, who's always found himself keeping a great advantage on the tracks he loves the most, including Monaco, could probably see himself fighting hard once again on another street track that he's finding himself quite lucky here as he gambles for another lap, but he takes off, he stops it as Squirt continues on, and you never know. That dirty air either helped Squirt with the current lap he's on, or maybe made him slower. The slipstream's always powerful here. Squirt getting a little loose with the car there, not what he wants. What you don't want either is a Mercedes in the back. You don't know if that was King Cobra, but what you do know is Squirt takes the lap with a 130.9. Renato, who finds himself P3 with a V-carb right on his tail, who's going for the shorter line to also keep in and not get too much slipstream, finds himself almost losing the rear end. Renato, though, ready to cross the line to set his time down, and it's going to be a 130.7. Hash Brown finds himself right ahead of Leo with a P3, getting right onto the podium once more for a P3 start, which finds himself gaining more points. He wants to secure the most held points for a driver champion, and he's going to secure with some heavy lead right here. Although Renato finds himself with a huge advantage over Goober, who finds himself P7 ahead of Inhumane Dan, making his move well known. Mark, who finds himself P6, right behind Luis Carlos. Further down the order, you can see U6 getting himself P10, and Deathly Venom further down in the order. With angry words being spilled out during the quali, there's been some heated exchange found with the Alpine and TTV. Of course, race director will get a look at the clips when it counts the most. We have to take a look at that eventually. But what you can see here at the bottom of the list is Striker not putting down a time, Nocturno not putting down a time. Lewis finding himself struggling here. Not what he wants to see, but what you do want to know here is that Las Vegas is always about gambling. It's not always about being in the front. I think what could possibly occur here is if you play it safe, you play it smart, and stay out of carnage, especially on a street track like Las Vegas, it always pays off in the end. there in the back, you can see all the cars lined up with the Williams ready to take the inner line on Renato, who finds himself taking the lead of the race. Everyone going through. Hash Brown taking it wide. Not what he wants. Getting on the dirty side of the road there. Not what he needs. Getting himself loose as Hash Brown finds himself P6. Luis getting back as Mark makes the places when it matters the most. The start of the race, as Goober keeps it right behind as U6 gets a good start. TTV holding behind as Dan holds in. A little bit of contact there between U6 and Goober. Not the best, but it's always what's bound to happen in a street track such as this. Everyone down the order, keeping it safe and secure as everyone up ahead in the lead fights as they are bringing it on. Back behind, you can see the trail slowly starting to occur. What you can see up ahead is the Red Bull of Mark is on the tail of Luis Carlos, making a nice DRS slipstream train that could occur when the DRS turns on. But right back behind, you can see Goober, U6, and Dan and TTV hopefully keeping that true just as much. As you can see the overtake getting done by Dan on the Haas team. Both a client of the Ferraris working together, but finding themselves colliding a bit there. Not what they want. Carnage is in the front as well as Goober finds himself, not Goober, Mark is turned around, finding himself damaged. Not what he needs there. I don't know what else has occurred there, but there's more wreck and carnage that occurred from that slip up. Either there was contact or some collision of some sort, but what you do see is Leo now holding back on Hash Brown as they both go too wide. Collisions have occurred and catastrophes happened, but Goober keeping it right behind Hash Brown. The Ferraris battling together, making a blockade here. Anything they can to probably keep the constructors alive for them, but what you do see is Luis Carlos. That had to be a collision between Luis and Mark there. There's no question about it. Either Luis made a mistake and collected Mark, or something worse. Would have to get reviews after the race to see what occurred there. But what you do see up ahead is the Ferraris battling it hard, Hash Brown pulling away, and further back you have Goober finding himself P5 to hold the Red Bull team strong as Mark has to climb back up the order. And speaking about climbing up the order, there is Squirt who's bringing it side by side with Renato. Both on the hard tires, both going too wide. This is on the strip, going into third sector. Squirt thinks better of it to get behind, keep the slipstream, as right behind you can see Inhumane Dan getting P6. The overtake getting done, Goober going for it, and oh, carnage has occurred! Oh, that is a huge wreck for Leo and Hash Brown. Both of the Ferraris were collected in that, and there's more wrecks to occur, which suits the Golden Sniper, who brings out a safety car colliding with the Ferrari. A safety car will be brought out. That is a huge wreck. The safety car allowing everyone to go by the seams of it, which allows everyone further back to figure out if pitting can help them in the long run. But what you do see is Hash Brown, who has to get a wing repaired and with a flat tire. This is not what the Ferrari team wants here, who finds himself fighting for the constructors just as much as they were fighting for the drivers. Hash Brown, who fought so hard, finds himself P18 after a wonderful qualifying. But what this does spell is victory for the Aston team, finding themselves 5 and 7th with U6 in a good net P6 right now as it stands. Deathly Venom, who started P16, finding himself P10. U6 finding himself, I believe, P10 into P6. Goober, who finds himself on the podium. All it takes is one mistake from Renato. With Squirt, it could happen. You never know. That could always open the door for Goober. let alone he has a battle of his own probably with Luis Carlos, but that never means it's over, especially with the Aston of TTV right behind in P5. Leo, who finds himself with damage from that situation though, by the right-hand side, you can see it as more people do go into the pits, which seems to be Ozzy, TTV, and Luis Carlos. Further back behind, you can see the Alpine of Alex Lefebvre following Max. Up ahead, Hash Brown leading with what seemed to be quite a huge incident through the third sector chicane that we're coming up to right now. A dive which saw from Goober, which led to what seemed to be what could have caused the collision, but a further review would always need to be looked at in there. You never can understand the true value these cars really hold through the corners. They've always acted very finicky, and right there, that would be something that would have to go under heavy review to understand what just happened. I didn't get the good view of it, but by the sounds of it, it seems like it was catastrophe. There will definitely be some upset in the garage, no doubt about it. Following this is the last race. This was a race that Hash Brown probably wanted to make a name for himself. But like I said, this is Las Vegas, and you always know how big starting in the front, starting in the back, the middle, anywhere throughout these packs are going to be dangerous. So it makes you wonder how cautious were these drivers. A move down into a chicane like third sector, it's always fun to watch. The risk reward. And the reward has been given to the Haas team, who finds himself finally having both cars in the points. Although the safety car finding itself piling up a little bit, so every driver will have to be on their toes. Mark finds himself P11. I don't know if that is wing damage on his left-hand side or not. I can't get a good look at it. It looks like it is. It looks like he's missing a huge end plate there. Not what Mark wants right now in this race, unless that's a debug and not fully syncing. But that does look like the Red Bull completely has his front left wing gone. It's going to heavily slow him down. Having Dan, who's sniffing him right behind. Following suit is the Mercedes driver of King Cobra, Lewis, who finds himself P7 behind Leo. The safety car is bound to come in this lap. No doubt about it. With 20 laps remaining, you never know if another safety car could happen. What this will do, though, is it will repack the bunch and get the fighting action back in it. The points that reach up to P15, with a full grid still left in the whole race. Just contrast for you though, striking drivers left and right will see the restart of the safety car, everyone bunching up as Renato takes it right to the line when he restarts the cars. Everyone getting bunched up in the whole situation. You can see it as U6 goes side by side. Renato, everyone going past as Goober gets pushed Everyone's slowing down as another safety car ensues. Mark facing a 10-second penalty. It makes you wonder if anyone did get wing damage there, but what you do see there is all the drivers finding themselves in another safety car. This is definitely going to put some heavy fuel in those cars. Maybe get a few of them off some balance that they might not have initially prepared for during this race. You can see Renato keeping that good pace between the space needed for the safety car there. It makes you wonder if everyone was getting heavily bunched up from the restart, or if people were just getting too eager on the gas there. U6 though, on debut, finding himself in P4, who finds himself gaining from the whole situation of that safety car. As green lights go out again, and there, the move is going to be done by U6, who gets a little slidey there, goes for the move. That is not anticipated, but he gets it done, and he starts slipping still, but he's finding himself in P3. Moving out for the slipstream to not be captured, but it does get caught for Ozzy, man, who finds himself maybe able to pull alongside, not able to just as yet. The action is tight, and it's jam-packed as the Mercedes further behind gets loose. Everyone getting out of the way of that. It was King Cobra who gets a little loose there as Leo gets a little slidey, pushes the Aston off the track there. Mercedes having to take avoiding action. The Aston and Mercedes do find themselves close than ever on the straightaway, but up ahead can be Squirt, who's right on the tail of Renato. The move, though, gets done for Mark, though, as the Haas captures the Red Bull driver's carnage all behind. As Squirt gets the move done on Renato, there's going to be huge discussions going on in the steward rooms tonight, with the driver of Deathly Venom capturing Mark's tire by the seams of it. DRS now enabled, but even worse of a race for Mark, finding himself P10 with a 10-second penalty, I believe. Squirt, though, who finds himself out in front as the Haas driver of U6 is back in P4, but still on the 6 of Goober. Although it's really close for Dan, who's right on the tail of Luis Carlos in the Kick Sauber. The initial reserve driver for Red Bull is on the tail of the McLaren, but what you do see is the rubbing scene from TTV there with Lewis. What you also see is Hash Brown gaining on those corners on the back of Inhumane Dan. Dan, who finds himself going two alongside with the Ferrari driver of Hash Brown for 10th place. Up ahead, you can see Lewis getting the job done just as well. as Leo gets in the back of the Aston, as what seems to be as the Aston into the barriers. It's TTV who finds himself in the barriers, having to rejoin, finding himself possibly with damage in that front wing. It doesn't look like it by the seams of it, but what does happen is Hash Brown has a good lineup on the driver of Humane Dan, gets a little touch with him on the outside as the door gets shut closed and they make contact. Hash Brown finding himself on the dirty side of the track, still going too wide with Humane Dan, getting the place done as Aussie Man loses out to Leo. But it's not just over yet, as the move for Lewis is still under threat by Luis Carlos. Leo, who gets himself a 3-second, the Mercedes of Lewis having to rejoin, getting it all done wrong in second sector as Hash Brown finds himself right on the tail. Hash Brown, who finds himself going too wide, going it for the move in the chicane, getting it done, but almost unable to leave the space as the Mercedes collides with Hash Brown. There's a huge collision that finds Inhumane Dan currently disqualified as a huge wreck comes from behind with Golden Sniper getting involved. The virtual safety car is out. That is a huge wreck, which finds Hash Brown getting a 10-second penalty following from the wreck with Lewis, who was initially pushed to the edge, what seemed to be like losing traction when he got back on the gas. U6 though finds himself in P3 going into the pits as Goober stays out. Leo with a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. It's going all wrong for the Ferrari team here today. It seems like it's also going to be what seemed to be a wonderful race for the Kick Sauber team. All gone downhill. Ferrari finding themselves with huge 10-second penalty to serve following wing damage and a new set of tires for this race. Uber, who finds himself on the back of Renato, fighting for a P3 by the seams of it, with Luis Carlos, the teammate driver for Renato, behind in P3. King Cobra, who finds himself P4. Squirt, who gets his pit stop done, bringing it back into P5 with a nice fresh medium set. 2 safety cars and a virtual that does bring into the question if all the safety cars for the session is currently out or not. There's always been a limit to these kinds of safety car procedures. Right behind was Mark, who finds himself with a horrible beginning, finding himself hopefully able to recover some points of that in a P14 position. Hash Brown getting himself into another accident. Not what he wanted here. It wasn't ever anticipated that Lewis might have either lost the car in that situation. In all honesty, that would have to go into review. Lewis, looks like he lost the car when he got back on the gas. But of course, there's always going to be some heated arguments going down in the paddock, in the chats, for this last race event. I guess I was very wrong. The virtual safety car is just showing it's glitched, as it is a safety car. This is the 3rd safety car. I wasn't thinking that much. But what I do think about is how this could probably turn the tables for the Ferrari team. They found themselves going in here with a lot of energy to take on the constructors, but now find themselves P6 and P13. Red Bull as well find themselves what I believe was a 5 and 6 start, or 4 and 5, finding themselves with Goober in P2 and Mark in P14 behind Hash Brown. Renato, who finds himself with another pole and finding himself leading the pack still, will have to start the safety car when it comes in another time. The question is, was staying out the right move for these drivers? Las Vegas might see one of the most intense and craziest races with how mixed the order can be from where it stands. The tire situations are always up for grabs, and with Goober and Renato not seeming to have yet pit, following maybe Luis Carlos, it brings in the question, what will they do if there's not another virtual or safety car? Are they able to pull the gap on the other cars behind with their tire sets? Will the other car's tires burn out beforehand? These hard tires are going to be going the distance, and with all the safety cars that have been going through, it has put a good amount of wear on them that it doesn't heavily stress these tires out. They're of course having to start hitting that peak though, of course. No doubt about. Safety car coming in this lap, everyone's going to have to be ready to leave that good amount of gap needed from the safety car. Everyone who's going to be ready for the start of this race. Luis Carlos is telling Cobra, move along. Why are you alongside me going through a chicane? It's not what you want. Squirt, though, who seems just as aggressive, get alongside as well. Goober, who's going to have to follow Renato going into this corner, starts, gets a little bit of a worse run as Luis Carlos finds himself right behind, but Luis sticking behind as King Cobra absolutely shoots it off in the distance, losing it, rejoining a little aggressive there with U6, almost touching with him, believing I think I saw the little contact there, but what you do see up ahead is Luis Carlos sticking his nose a little aggressive there. He wants to get that place. Oh, but what you do see is Goober going a little wide. Not what he likes to see as he loses out to Luis Carlos. Goober not having the race he wants as Squirt gets it done on the inside. A beautiful dive bomb. Leo, who finds himself tapping right into the back of the Red Bull. Heavily upset. But with less of a wing, he might have the advantage on the straightaways. What you do see further behind is a battle. King Cobra losing out more positions as Hash Brown gets through, going 2x2 with Max as they get it done. Max sticking behind. The battle is never over though as Mark finds himself getting past King Cobra. Although U6 going alongside with the Red Bull driver, trying to keep right on behind for the slipstream for Leo, but Leo unable to provide that slipstream, giving it to the Red Bull driver instead as they go too wide. U6 and the Red Bull go for the chicane through third sector, getting a little squirrely there as the Haas moves into TTV, absolutely causing damage for the Aston Racer and for others up ahead. As you can see up ahead as King Cobra gets it all done wrong, trying to get out of the way. Everyone pitting up ahead. It's absolute carnage. Once again, you see another safety car, I believe, coming out here. Squirt, who's already got himself on that medium tire set, now finding himself in a little bit of a trickier situation as Mark recovers the car back to a P6 situation with no time to even have to stress about. Hopefully he could keep it within the markers for the rest of the race and not have any more unfortunate luck. But what you do know is the DRS is getting enabled. Why, it seems like the safety car would be in, but it's a VSC. But what you do see is TTV getting a driving speed through, not what he wants. Squirt finding himself on the back of Renato, who gets it done wrong, almost unable to get the move done. Squirt was almost alongside, but the defense from Renato held accountable, held really well in holding off the Williams racer, who brings it now alongside, getting it done, as so does his teammate of Luis Carlos, who's homing in for the chicane and brings it neatly through. But now what you can see is unbroken Leonardo able to catch up with Renato. Mark on the back of Goober here. Wonderful that the drivers find themselves back in a wonderful net position, with Hash Brown actually finding himself in 7th place as well. It's a nice Ferrari sandwich for the Red Bull team, who still are in the battle for the constructors here. As they go up for the sphere, you can see as Renato gets it all wrong with the hard tires, as unbroken Leonardo holds on for this lap to hopefully put that pressure on and get the move done on the fresher mediums. Mark getting it done. Hash Brown, who finds himself going too wide, close side by side with Goober. Goober, who's finding himself battling for that P6 position. Mark, who's providing a slipstream, not that he wants to, but that he has in that situation, that is providing a slipstream for the Ferrari to pull away from Goober, as Goober is unable to gain on Mark. But what you do see is Luis Carlos getting himself in first place ahead of Squirt. Squirt may be posing a risk and a challenge to a title contention for Season 3, has Leo following suit, passing Renato, as Mark gets it through with Hash Brown in the chicane. The battle is very intense, as right behind you can see the Alpine going a little risky there, as almost contact happening as the Williams racer of Golden bangs into the wall a little bit there. Huber finding himself with a 10-second for speeding in the pit lane. The battle, though, is with Luis Carlos and Squirt. Squirt getting it done in first sector. The battle is here, up in the front, and also in the back, where you can see another battle for the Williams and Lewis, as TTV gets another 10-second for speeding in pit lane. TTV, in fact, unable to allow this to further happen, retires from the session. Further unable and unwilling to talk with the team, puts himself out of the race to retire the car and reduce the damage done for the overall team. As you can see, Squirt drifting the car in the first sector, and right behind you can see a little bit of drifting going on for Mark himself, trying to get on the back of Hash Brown for the DRS zone. And right there you can see Leo making it 3 wide as they go onto the strip for the third sector. Squirt losing out. Luis battling with Leo, letting Leo go past, Leo leading the GP, who found himself with a wonderful, wonderful net pole. I believe he set one of the best times we saw at the beginning of the whole race. It's now being here where it was Renato who left himself now drop down the order into P10, who found a terrible strategy with the McLaren team. Oh, as Squirt getting nearly wing damage from getting so close up behind Luis Carlos, getting the move done though when it matters in the first sector, still holding on to it and holding on to the back of Leo, who's getting it all squirrely through second chicanes in the second sector. Squirt drifting that car though. Luis able to maybe capitalize on it. Luis playing it smart here. Mark getting so close on the back of Hash Brown. As Luis Carlos with the DRS has it now, getting past Squirt once more again. As same goes for Mark. And further in the back is the two Mercedes and Alpine driver of Alex finding themselves going at it. As the positions get swapped up with Lewis and Alex alongside with the driver of King Cobra. King Cobra, who has wing damage, is still holding on to the back of that Alpine. Further up ahead, though, is Hash Brown, who's finding himself on a position for fourth place on Mark on the first sector. It's all about this DRS chicken game with all these drivers out on the track as Renato plays it himself, getting the better grip on the inside line, getting it past Cobra with that wing damage. Cobra, known for going for risky dive bombs, might see him lock up on the brakes. He doesn't, getting it nicely set up there with the wing damage he has as Renato brings it too wide with Alex. And there you can see it, the move possibly done, and it does get done neatly by the McLaren racer as he has to get past Lewis now. With wonderful throttle control there, not losing the rear end at all. He's able to keep it neatly behind Lewis. Lewis feeling the pressure to go for a defensive line, knowing it's going to play better, but it proves a worse line on the exit unless he was just letting him go by. That is not the defense that Lewis wanted, but maybe it allows him for the better straight line speed with DRS, but you never know with now Renato having it, getting it on the line. That's not going to prove beneficial for Lewis at all, as the Alpine racer of Alex as well can benefit from this as they go too wide once again, and there's bumping between the Alpine and the Mercedes driver. And speaking of bumping, there's almost some bumping there, and you see it. In fact, the bump of Hash Brown into the back of Mark, not what he wants, getting it all a little loose there in the rear because of Hash Brown overshooting it on the corner. Huber, who finds himself in P10, still with a penalty. A caution coming up in Sector 3, following a Haas racer that brings out a yellow flag. Oh, as the Haas driver of U6 almost unsafely comes back onto track in front of Aussie Man. This safety car could entirely switch up the whole race. Aussie Man retiring from this session. There will be no points for the Aston team, which finds McLaren able to capture that fourth place in the constructors' standings, where initially struggling at the beginning of the season. Throughout halfway, they picked up a driver by the name of Renato, Renato had brought that team back up, finding another driver suitable for the team before having a TP in, as everyone in the front seems to be going in the pits as Leo gets a 10-second penalty. Squirt finding himself as well getting a 10-second, and Carlos without one. Mark, though, who finds himself in P1. 5 laps to go on the medium tires. This could be a huge, huge redemption arc for Mark, who found himself having a terrible beginning to this race. The only driver out of the points at the moment is following Striker. Alex finding himself getting a drive-through, unable to serve that during the safety car, not what he wants there. Renato, who finds himself on the fresh, soft pair. He's going to fight through the crowd to get first place. By the seams of it, he's ready to push those soft sets and try to recover another P1 if possible, if he is able to pass through all the traffic he has up ahead. Huber, who finds himself in P12 though, as well on the soft set, most likely getting rid of that wing damage and 10-second penalty, I believe. Deathly Venom, though, finds himself P8. U6, initially having a wonderful race, finding himself at one point P3, now in P15. We're going into the pits, possibly get that 10-second time penalty off by the seams of it, allowing Leo to get back into P3. Lewis now in P4 with Hash Brown behind. More cars able to gain from this position-wise. Oh man, that was a lot stronger than I thought. Take another rip as this safety car gets prepared. With not many laps to go, those medium sets, are they able to compete with the soft sets behind Mark, finding himself with a buffer of 3 other medium runners behind him? Hash Brown, Renato, both on the soft tire sets themselves. Hash Brown, though, may be able to battle with Renato. As what can be seen behind is Nocturno getting it off the track there and losing a position. What just happened there? Under the safety car, it looks like he loses the car. and is getting all twitchy. U6 having to give the position back, given by team orders over the radio by the stewards, it seems like. Although everyone's getting all bunched up. Everyone needing to give the proper space needed for the final safety car that seems to provide 3 laps of racing left on the final race of the IRL Season 2. After this race, the calendar will be posted, but if Mark is able to keep this position, this will be a beautiful, beautiful add to the amount of wins that the Red Bull team has been able to accomplish. Mark warming the tires up. The pressure of Luis Carlos, Leo, and Lewis with penalties of their own all behind. Hash Brown and Renato with none of their own. Goober, none. But following Sue ahead will be the Alpine and RB, who both have penalties, as Golden Sniper finds some points for the Williams team. Hopefully able to hold that extent to get through for that net P5 in the Constructors' standings. Or I believe P6. As safety car is ready to come in this lap, everyone's going to need to be ready. A good amount of space is always required for the start of each of these safety cars. Otherwise, it's always bound to have a disaster down in corner 1. As they go down the Harmon Avenue straight, they're going to get ready to go across the finish and start line that announced earlier throughout the season would be the final race for our 2024 season. Season 2, here we are as everyone starts back out on the track. Luis Carlos, who finds himself right behind Mark. Leo, Hash Brown getting it done as Lewis loses places on the start of it. Renato holding strong as Deathly Venom goes too wide with the Mercedes driver unable to get past without the slipstream. Up ahead, you can see the Red Bull of Mark almost going too wide with Luis Carlos. As Luis Carlos gets dive bombed as he absolutely punts Mark up ahead and almost punts. It's Leo who's going for dangerous, risky dive bombs here at the end of the race, punting Mark off the line, getting Luis all done wrong. The McLaren and Ferrari team, including Mark in front, are facing the most intense battle we have seen yet. Leo pushing Mark out of the corners. As they go 3 wide, 2 wide, it's absolutely insane. Everyone's going by. There's carnage as everyone is deciding to keep it 3 wide. Up ahead, it's going to be a disaster. Everyone's going for terrible things. And there he sees the Red Bull of Mark punting Lewis. Lewis getting Leo. I believe by the seams of it, it was absolute disaster for everything and everyone there. Hash Brown getting through, pulling away as Renato puts the P2 and P3 there as DRS is now enabled. The drivers of Deathly Venom and Lewis are back there, and right there you can see as one of the V-Carbs gets it all wrong, it's Max, as everyone up ahead is trying to pull away. The Mercedes driver of Lewis gets overtaken by Golden. As the driver striker has to go into the pits, it's Renato who's on the back of Hash Brown. He could find himself another possible win in this story. It seems like another racer has found himself losing the positions. There's pumping going ahead. U6 getting pumped by the RB and as the RB gets it all wrong in the second sector as Lewis has to avoid it, unable to, as the RB of Max gets the V-car, but Max gets spun around. Yeah. As Renato goes for it, it's going too wide. Hash Brown having to defend, unable to, but he has the car in. He goes and he squeezes into Renato, unable to keep the position as Luis Carlos is now able to bring the car up alongside. Luis Carlos now getting the fastest lap by the seams of it as Squirt actually steals it right there and then. Squirt getting up into P7. Squirt, who's currently fighting with Leo and the Haas. A little bit of bumping with the Williams and the Ferrari driver. The Williams squeezing himself into the only pocket he sees to get the move done on the Haas. Slamming into the wall, but getting the move done completely. Hash Brown now trying to keep with Renato on the last lap without a penalty of his own as Mark gets a 3-second penalty. Oh, and he spun. It looks like it's catastrophe. It's a wreck for the Red Bull. That was a huge wreck for the Red Bull driver. Luis Carlos getting the car all wrong. Hash Brown, who has himself one more chance to probably strike at Renato. Is he gonna do it here, or is he gonna do it up ahead? Hash Brown going too wide. The teammate of Luis Carlos staying behind. Renato staying behind for the DRS, I believe, on the straightaway. As Luis Carlos gets it to go alongside, he's going to go for the victory. It's Luis Carlos who comes along the line first, but it's Hash Brown who gets it done in P1. With all the time penalties, everything's going to be reordered, but that race was absolute carnage from start to finish. 4, 5 safety cars were seen at the whole beginning of this race. It was all a coin flip. Mark finding himself in P10 at the end of it, who found himself wonderfully at the start of the safety car, and unfortunately now once again seen spinned out. There they go by the sphere one last time as they're gonna park the cars up. There's gonna be absolute anger in the paddocks. This does, I believe, secure Red Bull as the World Constructors Championships with that current position standing from Goober, keeping the Red Bull family safe from the dominant force of Ferrari. But at the same time, there was so much collisions that were occurring, you don't know what exactly did happen there. There's going to be a lot of reviews, a lot of tickets for sure coming out, I'd imagine, for the stewards to be looking at. But what you do see is Deathly Venom getting himself a debut 5th from the start of 15th. The Williams drivers of Squirt to P2, Goober to P7, Hash Brown into P1 from the P3, Renato down to P2, Luis Carlos, who would have had a P1 if it wasn't for the penalties. Absolute terrible race for U6 at the midway section for him, but he recovers back to a P8. Mark getting it spun around, it seems like, near the end, with Leo also following suit to a P11. We'll see you all at the end of Season 3. That will now be soonly coming soon. Season 2 is now going to be coming to a wrap's end, though. I hope everyone enjoyed. Season 3 is coming soon. Take care.